Happy New Year to everyone. This is the first of about 9 reports that we will be releasing in this coming year. So we have a few new faces, and I want to welcome you. The AG will have a few minutes of introduction to the report, about 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll go to the room for questions. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Auditor General Kim Adair.
Thanks, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. So this morning I tabled our 2025 financial report. The annual financial report includes the audits from over 100 organizations under provincial control, including departments, crown corporations, and other public organizations. Nova Scotia's annual spending has grown steadily over the past 4 years and is up $5.4 billion for a total of $18 billion, or a 43% increase since fiscal 2021. The province has posted surpluses in 4 of the past 5 years. However, during the same period, Nova Scotia's net debt has grown. Even with that history of recent surpluses, including this year's $265 million surplus, the province's net debt is up $1.7 billion from last year and was $20.8 billion by the end of fiscal 24-25. A trend of increased net debt weakens a government's financial position because more of its future revenues will be needed to pay past debts. That could negatively impact the ability to provide provincial services without resorting to additional borrowing. The government has made big investments in healthcare projects, and those have factored in to the increase in net debt. They include $361 million in the Halifax Infirmary expansion and $146 million for Cape Breton healthcare redevelopment. And there was also an investment of $325 million for the province's long-term care facilities, including nursing homes. Service agreements with the nursing home operators, now worth $15.7 billion, are also one of the major contributors to an increase in Nova Scotia's contractual obligations, also known as spending commitments. Over the past 5 years, Nova Scotia's total future spending commitments have continued to increase, growing from $9.8 billion in 2021 to $29.7 billion in 24-25. As a result of the public accounts audit, I am asking the province once again to improve public accountability for over-budget spending that is not approved by the legislature. Change is needed to ensure MLAs and taxpayers clearly show where all public funds are going. Over-budget spending has significantly increased in recent years, with a total of $6.7 billion approved since 2021, including $1.6 billion in 24-25 alone. The real issue is that the accountability process for over-budget spending in Nova Scotia does not require the legislature to review, vote on, and approve the extra amounts, a process that is followed in many other provinces across Canada and at the federal government. Although I note that accountability and transparency around over-budget spending improved slightly this year, I am concerned that important recommendations remain unaddressed. So once again, I'm recommending these changes because I believe that's what is best for accountability and transparency when it comes to spending public funds. As I mentioned at the beginning, the annual financial report includes audits from over 100 organizations under provincial control. And for the 25th year in a row, the government did receive a clean audit opinion on its financial statements. This means that all Nova Scotians have assurance that they can rely on the financial statements. Other items covered in the report include healthcare costs up over 5 years. So Nova Scotia's annual healthcare operating expenses were $7.7 billion in 24-25, an increase of $2.4 billion over the last 5 years. The tobacco settlement. The province may receive up to $785 million over 20 years from Canadian tobacco companies to help offset costs of smoking on the healthcare system. The province purchased $117 million of receivables from Nova Scotia Power. To ease rising electricity rates and prevent a significant rate increase for customers, the province spent $117 million to purchase receivables from the utility. The impact of removing Halifax Harbour bridge tolls. Annual toll revenue of roughly $25 to $37 million is no longer being collected. The province is now responsible for future capital and operating expenses for the bridges, both bridges, which averaged $29 million a year for the past 5 years. This year's financial report also reveals both favorable and unfavorable trends in the province's financial performance over the past 5 years. Before I open it up to your questions, I want to thank my staff for their efforts in producing this report. The province's financial statements are the largest audit we do each year. We kicked off this audit back in May, and it is a huge group effort involving many throughout government and our office working several months to complete. My thanks to all of them, as they are key to our ability to do this work each year.
Okay, take it away.
So, is Nova Scotia on a sustainable path? When looking at this report, the things that jumped out to me were contractual obligations, the growth in the debt, and the fact that we can expect debt to continue to grow given the acquisition of assets that's going on.
Correct. So there's a number of important numbers, financial indicators, and we show 5-year trends in this report. And a number of them are trending unfavorably and are of a concern from a sustainability perspective. They include the very fast pace at which spending is growing, now at $18 billion a year. It has grown 43% since 4 years ago. Net debt is now at $20.8 billion, which is growing very, very quickly, and the borrowed debt, unmatured debt, is also just under $20 billion, and the interest cost on that debt is growing at a very fast pace. I think it's like $750 million a year, and that money is not available for spending on government programs and services. And the other one, as you mentioned, is future commitments. It's gone up very quickly at almost $30 billion. So those are all concerning financial indicators, and they're trending unfavorably.
Can you speak to the fact that this is the 4th consecutive year that you've made the recommendation regarding finance acts and oversight? Can you elaborate just on the concern about $1.6 billion in budgeted spending?
Sure. So the $1.6 billion was the unbudgeted spending for the most recent year, 24-25. We point out that it's $6.7 billion in the last 5 years. All of that is the spending of the public purse that does not go to the floor of the legislature. Unlike most other provinces in Canada, where there's an appropriations bill, a money bill, tabled, debated, voted on, and goes through the full process. Here in Nova Scotia, under the Finance Act, and it is in accordance to the current Finance Act, is that the government of the day, cabinet, can approve that extra spending, and then there's an order in council tabled. There's very little process by the elected officials with all of that public spending. So that's my main concern. And finance has made some slight improvements, we refer to it in the report, in terms of financial reporting. But still, I think there's further improvement, and my main concern is the change to the Finance Act, which I feel it's important enough for Nova Scotians to repeat that recommendation each and every year.
Are there other things they could do that would improve transparency, given that they clearly indicate in the report they have no plans to change the practice?
Other things that the government can do, well, in terms of financial reporting, there is the public accounts, there's the budget, but the budget is off significantly for the last recent years. I mean, the 1.6 extra spending last year represented 9% of the budget, right? So that's a significant portion. The financial reporting pieces are similar to that of other jurisdictions. The difference in Nova Scotia is the Finance Act.
Perhaps given that they've got a clean report again this year, the answer answer to this would be no, but do you have concerns, you talk about how the PYA tends to be so far off from the estimates. Do you have concerns that the government is lowballing on purpose so that it does have this revenue that it can then spend outside of the budget process?
No, in the past, we did work on the revenue estimates and we didn't have that concern. We're no longer doing that engagement because of the difficulty around, because it's been off so much in recent years and the prior year adjustments. It's difficult to put some sort of assurance level opinion on the revenue estimates. But no, I wouldn't say we have concerns to what you're suggesting.
Okay.
The report covers, of course, the year that was in the public accounts that was released over the summer. But since then, the government has cut taxes, the HST in particular, about $300 million in revenue lost. Do you have any concerns about how that might impact the sustainability?
So that would be a decision, a tax policy decision, which is not appropriate for me to weigh in on. I think what's important is that Nova Scotians are well aware of the financial indicators and the trends. It's up to the government to choose how they want to go going forward. The latest forecast indicates a deficit of $1.3 billion. But there's a myriad of decisions that can be made to make a change to that, whether it's spending decisions, tax policy decisions, or increasing debt. And that's decisions of the government that are policy in nature that I don't weigh in on.
You did note in the report that a lot of what we've seen in the last few years was against the backdrop of COVID. So COVID had a big impact on budgets while it was happening, at the height of the pandemic, and then there was a big rebound. Does that make the trends? What does that tell you about the trends that you're describing?
It's a good question, and I think it's important to note some of the indicators like net debt to GDP in this report are on par with what it was in 2021. And the reason for that is because the economy was suppressed at that time, and that's the benchmark that we're comparing to. And we know that coming out of the pandemic, economic growth has been very strong, and that's why that indicator has not changed with the increase in spending. Or the net debt is a measure of the economy and net debt. But going forward, it'll be interesting to see because the economy is not growing as fast a pace as it did coming out of the pandemic.
Ms. Adair, your report notes that spending on health-related operations has increased $2.4 billion over the past 5 years, and we know that the population has grown and people are getting older, so we need more health services. But it also notes that health administration costs in the last 3 years are up 17%, 18%, 17% each year. How closely were you able to look at what's happening within Nova Scotia Health to understand whether those increases in health spending are justified?
Okay. So for purposes of today's report, we're not weighing in on like we would on a performance audit. This is about our financial audit, and in this report, there's a lot of details about the health spending and broken down into various programs and things like travel nurses and the capital dollars, and it's intended to be information for members of the public accounts to then delve into and ask the officials about those details and to make those judgments. We don't say whether the spending is of value for this report, but we weigh in on those on separate audits, as you know.
Is there anything underway at the present time to monitor or look into spending at Nova Scotia Health with respect particularly to admin costs?
Administrative cost, nothing specific to administrative, but we do have a number of health audits underway and on our website, I can't recite them for
Okay,
you
that's
from
okay.
memory right now, but in 2 weeks' time, we're tabling one that's related to, health indicators, like KPIs, key performance indicators, which might be of interest.
Great, any other questions?
There was a comment in your report that seemed to suggest that, if I've got this right, that it looks as if the government has been using every surplus each year and spending it rather than applying it to the debt or something like that. Is that your sense of things?
Correct, but the unanticipated revenue windfalls that have been experienced for the last 3 or 4 years have then in turn been spent on this over budget spending. And that's how they've managed to still have surpluses in 4 of the last 5 years. Yeah.
If that money had been applied to the debt instead of spent, what would the trend have looked like on the debt?
Well, I guess it depends on the amount that they did not spend. It would relate in probably less borrowing, unmatured debt, less interest costs going forward. Yeah, it's hard to say. It depended how much. Yeah.
Perhaps we can answer, just given that, with the recommendation that you've given, regarding the Finance Act for 4 years now, how much, optimism do you have that they would make that change going forward after this report?
At this point in time, I would say I don't have a lot of optimism because the response from the minister to those recommendations is pretty much a status quo response, so the same as what we've gotten in the last few years. But I'm hopeful in time it will get some traction if they ever open up the Finance Act, and our comments will be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as the Auditor General said, we'll be back here on January 27th for a performance audit on Action for Health, key performance indicators. We'll be sending out the news about that as we get closer. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Auditor General. If you want to set up for scrums now with